Once upon a time, there was a king who had a magnificent palace with a breathtaking garden. The garden was home to various types of flowers and trees bearing delicious fruits. However, the most astonishing feature of the garden was a unique apple tree that bore golden apples. The king had arranged for strict security around this tree, ensuring that no one could steal the precious fruit. Guards kept watch day and night. One day, the gardener noticed that a golden apple was missing. He rushed to inform the king, who was shocked. Despite the tight security, someone had managed to steal an apple. The king announced a reward for anyone who could find the thief. The eldest prince volunteered to keep watch that night and catch the thief. The king agreed. The eldest prince started his vigil, but after 2 hours, he fell asleep. By morning, another apple was missing. The second night, the middle prince took over, but he too fell asleep, and yet another apple was gone. The king grew increasingly worried. No one in the court could suggest a solution. Just then, the youngest prince stepped forward and offered to take on the task. The king was not fond of this prince, and often considered him foolish. Scoffing at the idea, the king asked, "Do you really think you can succeed where your smarter brothers have failed?" The youngest prince pleaded for a chance. Reluctantly, the king agreed. That night, the youngest prince resolved to stay awake at all costs. As midnight struck, he saw a magnificent golden bird flying into the garden. The bird perched on the tree and plucked a golden apple in its beak. The prince immediately shot an arrow, which missed the bird but struck a golden feather that fell to the ground. The bird flew away. The next morning, the prince presented the golden feather to the king and recounted what had happened. The feather was so beautiful and valuable that the king exclaimed, "If one feather is so splendid, imagine how magnificent the bird must be. I want it captured." The eldest prince set out to capture the bird. During his journey, he came across a fox resting under a tree. Seeing the fox, the prince aimed his bow, but the fox cried out, "Do not harm me, prince. If you seek the golden bird, follow my advice. Travel straight ahead, and by evening you will reach a village with 2 inns. One will be grand and luxurious, while the other will be simple and shabby. Stay in the modest inn, and your quest will succeed." The prince laughed and ignored the fox, choosing instead to stay in the grand inn, where he became distracted by merrymaking and forgot his mission. When the eldest prince didn't return, the middle prince embarked on the same quest. He too met the fox, who repeated the advice. The middle prince dismissed it, stayed in the grand inn, and also forgot his mission. Finally, the youngest prince requested permission to seek the golden bird. The king, convinced of his incompetence, reluctantly allowed him to go. The youngest prince met the fox and listened attentively. "I will follow your advice," he promised. Pleased, the fox said, "You are kind and wise. Sit on my tail, and I will help you." The fox's tail grew large, and the prince sat on it. The fox flew through the air, carrying the prince to the humble inn. Following the fox's advice, the prince stayed there and continued his journey the next day. The fox reappeared and guided him to a castle guarded by sleeping soldiers. "Enter without fear," the fox instructed. "Inside, you will find the golden bird in a simple wooden cage. Next to it will be a splendid golden cage. Do not transfer the bird to the golden cage, or you will regret it." The prince entered the castle and found the bird in the wooden cage. However, the golden cage was so beautiful that he couldn't resist transferring the bird into it. The moment he did, the bird let out a loud cry, waking the guards. The prince was captured and brought before the castle's king. "You attempted to steal my bird," the king declared. "I will spare you only if you bring me the golden horse from a neighboring kingdom." The prince agreed and left. Outside, he met the fox, who sighed, "You ignored my warning, and now you are in trouble. Still, I will help you." The fox explained how to find the golden horse, and warned the prince not to use the ornate golden saddle nearby. But once again, the prince couldn't resist, and as soon as he saddled the horse with the golden saddle, the animal neighed loudly, alerting the guards. The prince was captured and tasked with another mission, to bring back a golden princess from a nearby palace. The fox, disappointed yet forgiving, guided the prince to the golden princess and warned him not to let her return to her palace once she stepped out. Initially, the prince followed the advice, but when the princess begged to bid farewell to her parents, he relented. The moment she stepped back inside, the prince was captured again. Now, the prince was tasked with an impossible mission, to remove a mountain blocking the king's castle within 8 days. Despairing, the prince began digging, but the task was hopeless. On the 7th day, the fox appeared once more. "Will you finally listen to me?" it asked. The humble prince nodded. With the fox's magic, the mountain disappeared, and the prince was freed. The golden princess, bird, and horse were united, and they all returned to the youngest prince's kingdom, where they lived happily ever after. The moral: listening to wise advice can save you from unnecessary trouble.